back in the day when I first started working, it was more like, hey, Jared, you've got this assignment, go do your assignment and come back when it's done type of thing. And now it's, hey, team, go do this and let's collaborate it and work on it along the way. We want to work on the same document. We'll have 8 or 9 people working on one document in a meeting that has people from external, clients. We'll have a vendor on the line, and then we'll have internal people as well, some in the office, in the conference room, and some at home. And that's just the way we work today, right? So we need tools that kind of allow us to have that freedom and to be able to work that way. We also have a diverse workforce. And I don't really mean like the diversity the way you normally think of it. What I mean is like age differences and such. We have people who are right out of college who absolutely use their cell phone to do everything, who will sit in a meeting working on a laptop and working on their cell phone at the same time and being productive and getting things done. Work never ends. I'm out getting coffee. It's at lunch. I'm still checking my emails, doing things, editing a document, all on my cell phone. We have a mobile workforce that's doing these things. But also have people who've been around for, since the beginning of the company, like 25 years, things like that. And and some of them, they know how to use a computer and they know how to do it the way you told them to do it. We need to compensate for that as well. And then there's everyone in between, that kind of just works the way you think a normal organization would work. So all of that's in there, and all of that's something we need to be able to compensate for, right? And when you start thinking about that and breaking it down, so I've got network drives, but to get to those network drives, how's someone on a cell phone going to get to that, right? Do they have to VPN into an environment on their cell phone, then to get to files that they need to be able to edit right now before they get back to the office because they're out at lunch right now? How do we compensate for those things? And we feel like Office 365 and SharePoint kind of give us that edge up for this. And that's where we're kind of going. We also have employees, and, well, we all have employees, but I found that the more engaged our employees are, the more we get back as far as return of investment from them as well. And if I know in my daily job, I'm in the IT department, but I know that the sales department is doing wonderful things and they're meeting goals and things like that, I'm more empowered on my side to do better and to do more and to keep my end of the bargain up, right? If I know that, we have new clients, and I don't have to interact with that new client, but knowing that we have this new client, that made a lot of sense to me. And now as I'm going throughout my day, I'm like, I notice these things. I'm like, oh, wow. If that type of client is out there, you know what? I have a friend that works for this other company and they'd be a good client for us too. Let me bring that to the table. Wasn't even my job, but because I was more empowered and more informed, I was able to do that. And we find a lot of, if we get them engaged, they will produce more for us. And that's amazing. So how do we have environments that do all of this for us? That's the way we work today, right? And so Tara, tell me about your work week. Like how do you work in a normal week?
Yeah, so I work remote, but I do go into the office every once in a while. And so for me, having access to Teams, that's how I talk to everybody. That's how I communicate, run a lot of meetings through Teams. And then just the collaboration on files, the different versioning. There's a lot of things that we need to go back and forth. So having that remote that I can have everything with me at home, but then yet travel to the office, or even if I'm working out of a coffee shop, I have everything right there, and I'm able to, share that knowledge and continue to have those ideas with everybody and not be out of the loop.
I want to work at coffee shops. That'd be awesome, right? Ellie, do you have anything to add? How's your work week look?
Well, I would agree about the collaborating on files. So a lot of times we'll have staff meetings and we'll bring our laptops with us and we can all open the same document and be working on it live, or we can be putting it up on a screen and everybody can see the edits that are being made as we go. So that's a feature that we really love to use.
That's amazing. So I feel like everyone here probably has that same thing. Everyone online today probably works remote or has had to work remote at some point in time and likes those same features. So excellent. Thank you.
So Jared, what is Office 365 and how does it play in today's world?
All right. So great question. It's a surprise question. I didn't know you were going to ask that, but I want to talk about it for everybody. I don't want to assume that everyone here knows exactly what Office 365 is. Or even if you have Office 365 or SharePoint or OneDrive, you may know that one piece of the puzzle, but not know how the entire ecosystem works together. So I'll keep this at a very high level, but let's just talk about all the pieces of the puzzle there. So everybody has email. So you all know what email is, right? So every organization kind of needs a mechanism to do email. Once you get to the organization level, where there's more than 5 people inside your organization, it's no longer a matter of everybody having their personal email address and we can use that for our company. It's more, we need to all look like one company, look like one organization, and be able to work together. Now I need to start adding security, logins, all that kind of stuff in there. So you need like Active Directory. You don't need to memorize any of this. You'll have the slides. It's just to further the conversation. Once I have that, I'm also going to be able to give people access to like all those network drives, right? So all those network shares where we're storing all those documents. So those who haven't embraced the cloud yet, there's a server that needs to be in place for that. There's a machine, a machine somewhere that has to be able to drive that, right? And hold on to all that data. And then that guy has licensing for like its operating system and all that stuff. It needs to be maintained. You know why? Because operating systems go out of date. Got to keep that in mind. It's likely that you need to be able to create documents, right? So you need some type of document creation tools, right? You also want to be able to collaborate, like we said, to be able to communicate with people online. So we need some tool like AOL Instant Messenger or something like that, right? And then a lot of you are actually sitting out there, you have videos that either your clients or vendors or someone needs to see, your audience needs to be able to see. So you're leveraging Vimeo or YouTube or something like that to store videos out there. It's just a part of everyday business now. But then some of you are also taking your internal videos and still storing them on a platform like YouTube, which maybe we can have an alternate solution there for that, right? And then over the years, I've collected so much data that I need to start breaking down what that data means. How many people did we serve last year? What's the type? Let's break that down by the type of client that they are. Let's see where we're getting the main revenue streams from. Let's break all that information down and pivot charts and tables and little pie charts and things like that, right? We need to get reporting done on it. And then at some point in time, you need to share something with somebody who's not in your organization. So I can't just put it over on the shared drive, right, and let them go get it. I have to do what? Either email it to them, or I have to have it go through, one of your employees went out and got Dropbox, right? And now everybody's using that one employee's Dropbox, which is really, possibly still under their personal information. What happens when they leave the company, right? The weird things can happen there. I have less control where I want to see that, right? So Microsoft says, hey, let's put all that under one big roof, Office 365. So it's handling that email portion in Exchange Online. It's handling that Active Directory portion or synchronizing your on-prem Active Directory to the cloud through something called Azure AD. Don't commit that to memory because you don't need to know too much about that at this point. Okay, but then here's where SharePoint comes in. And I'm going to talk more about SharePoint as a whole, but this is where it comes in. Those shared drives. It's kind of where we get introduced to SharePoint in 2 ways. Oh, hey, you can use SharePoint as an intranet, or, oh, hey, I have all these files, I need to store them somewhere, and SharePoint is like a document management system, right? So we can move that over to SharePoint. That's where SharePoint comes into play. I'm going to talk about that in more detail a little bit later. But once I move all of my stuff over into SharePoint and I start using it in SharePoint, I get more that I can do. Other tools that are in Office 365 that can help me out, like Microsoft Flow, which is called Power Automate, but creating workflows. Power Apps to create little applications and apps that I could use on my cell phone or my desktop and be able to interact with data that we have inside the company. Awesome stuff, right? And then, either Skype, or which is older, but Teams is newer. So instead of that old mechanism or foreign mechanism or third-party mechanism for being able to communicate back and forth, Teams makes it still ties into the same security that I have for everything else that I'm using. That's good. And gives me opportunity. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Teams in this session as well. Then Microsoft Stream, okay, which is like your internal YouTube. Okay, so just think of it that way, and that's as much as I'll go into that. But very, very powerful. If you haven't looked at it yet, you absolutely want to look at what Stream can do for you. It's going through some changes as well. So where those changes are going to end up, I'm not really sure. Part of that's going to be moved into SharePoint, part of it into OneDrive. So there's some changes going on right now with Stream. But then for that reporting piece, you already have a tool in Office 365 available for you to do end-user reporting and such. It's called Power BI. Super powerful. Imagine a report. Yes, you could create that report. Imagine something huge. Yes, you can create it in Power BI. It's so powerful, so amazing, but so easy to learn. So I have taken, clients have come to us and said, hey, we have this Power BI. Could you teach us how to use it? And literally with a 3-hour ramp up, we've taught them all the things that they needed to know about Power BI to be able to start playing with it and start using it. In one of the sessions that I did, by the end of it, I said, well, was this helpful to everybody? And one guy says, oh yeah, it's so helpful that I just created 2 reports, sent them out to my team while we were doing the class. And now the team's already responded back, said, oh wow, these are super powerful and useful. That's how easy it is to get to. Now, just a caveat. Let's just say you want to create your own reports. You already have licensing for that. But let's say I want to create a report and I want to share that with Tara and have her be able to manipulate that report and look at it as well. Well, you might need an additional license for that called Power BI Pro. So it is possible that licensing might go up for that. But everyone has access to what the free version, I call it Power BI Basic. That's not its real name. Okay, so, and then there's this OneDrive. And we had some questions from you as well, from the audience, about OneDrive. So what we're going to see is that I've got this OneDrive, I've got Teams, I've got SharePoint, I've got this thing called Planner out there, and I've got a couple of other places where Microsoft's allowing me to store documents. Which one do I use, right? Plus we have our shared drives if we haven't cut those off. Which one where should I put my information? And then once you figure out, well, where should I be putting it? Or if you haven't figured that out, everybody's asking, where's that document? Where's that document? Oh, I thought I put it over here. It's supposed to be over here. We got to get control over all these little pieces of the puzzle as we go forward. So hopefully that makes sense. Here's one more thing that I find that my clients don't know about what they already have or what they have access to, I should say. And it's called Azure Information Rights Protection or Management. So it's also called ARM. It's also called a couple of different things, but it's found inside of the Security and Compliance Center inside of your Office 365 environment. I don't want you to memorize this. I just simply want you to know that this is possible. It is possible that you might need additional licensing to be able to do this as well, but know that it's possible to do, okay? If it becomes something that's important to your organization, then this is something you need to know about. What is that, Jared? What are you talking about? So have you ever had the problem where you thought, gosh, here's an internal document we have. I want to make sure that never gets out to anyone other than who's in the company. Okay, so that's not necessarily about security stopping Tara from seeing the document internally, right? It's not that. It's stopping Jared, who has access to the document, from accidentally sending it to someone externally, right? Or from leaving the company and I had it on a thumb drive and I wasn't doing anything malicious, but 2 years later I said, oh, I still got that document of information. Let me open it up. I don't want them to be able to open it up when they're not with the company anymore, right? Being able to keep my internal information internal, that's huge, right? That's huge and very important. So being able to avoid using outdated documents as well. So imagine you have like, here's our list of procedures or a standard operating procedure, or even a price list or anything like that, where my salespeople are using, and they had a copy of it over on their drive. So they're using an old copy, right? I want to make sure that they're always using the current copy. I can make sure those documents can't be used after a certain period of time, right? There's things that I can do inside this environment that are amazing, but in their everyday scenarios that Office 365 and SharePoint can solve. So just keep that in mind. Don't commit that to memory. Just know in the back of your brain that that can actually, that's something that can happen. So that's good stuff. All right. So I want to take a look at some of the Office 365 applications, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of them as we go through. Okay. So let's just jump out here to our actual environment. All right, so here I am in Office 365. I logged into office.com, or I just went to portal.office.com. That's my preferred way to do it, but it always still takes you to the office.com site. And inside of here on the left-hand side, you would see basically applications that you have access to in your environment. So if you have an environment, you can open it up today and you'll see all these same things. If you see less than I do, that's okay, because I may have a different level of access. And then you saw all those letters after my name. That's because Microsoft gives me free stuff because I have all those letters after my name. And so I see some things that you may not see, like Microsoft Project I have in here, but that's not normal for Office 365. But let's talk about what I do have inside of here, right? Here are some tools like bookings. Not sure if you've ever heard of it. You should look into it. If you have a scenario where you constantly have to email back and forth to see what time would be good for this particular meeting, right? For someone to come and meet with you, you can use bookings. And basically you can share your parts of your calendar with someone, your availability with someone, and allow them to just choose which time they want to meet with, and then it'll report it back to your calendar. That's a cool little tool, right? Not everybody here is going to need that, but for some people that might be awesome. There are actually other tools out in the world that do that same thing. Microsoft just built one inside of Office 365. Calendars, Excel, Outlook, all those things are pretty much things that you guys are familiar with, so I won't go over those. But I will stop here and talk about Microsoft Forms. So if you haven't used Microsoft Forms yet, definitely investigate it. I think it's worth your time. If you do surveys, if you use things like SurveyMonkey, right? If you're paying for SurveyMonkey, right? Or paying for some third-party tool that does this, this is free. It's already in your environment, right? And it allows you to do surveys and quizzes and polls and all that kind of good stuff. So really take a look at it, see if it meets your need. And if it does, maybe you save some money by not having to have that third-party item as well. OneDrive, I'm going to talk about OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams all together. So I'll skip over that for just a second. But I'll just say up front that it's really your place to store personal business documents. Okay, keep that thought in mind as we go forward. I'll let you chew on that for just a few minutes. Okay, OneNote. So there was a couple of questions about, like, can we get some more information on OneNote and such? So that's a common question that I get, right? Like, hey, I've got OneNote. I love OneNote. I started using it before we even got to SharePoint, and I want to be able to use it in conjunction with Office 365 or SharePoint, things like that. And so we end up training a lot of clients on how to use OneNote and some things that OneNote can do. So we also, though, see on a bigger scale, companies say, well, I don't know if we want them to use OneNote because of how powerful it is. Because inside of OneNote, I can do amazing things like attach a document and put an email inside of OneNote and some other really cool things that are just absolutely fascinating. But then I lose some control over what should be in that OneNote document and what can be in that OneNote document. And so what companies were finding is things that should have been actually placed into a SharePoint department site were actually ended up in somebody's OneNote or in a OneNote that was not accessible by all the people that need to be able to access it. So my point here is that powerful tool, I personally love it, but governance is needed there, meaning let's figure out the best way to use OneNote for the organization, or is it actually the tool that we should be using instead of, like, say, SharePoint or one of the other pieces that we have? So keep that in mind, all right? Outlook, again, you guys know about people. Planner, I'm going to show you Planner next, which is just a place that I can track tasks. So project management, task management, very agile, very friendly, very easy to learn and use, right? Power Apps, creating little mobile apps and such to use inside of your organization. Automation, so doing automation, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, or what automation is. Power Automate's a tool that's built in here that can do automation, not just for, like, say, SharePoint, but imagine someone fills out a survey in Microsoft Forms. We take the data from that and we use a workflow to pull that over into SharePoint so we can track that data. Then, based upon the data that was entered in the form, we send out an email to someone, or to a different department to let them know that something happened. And then when that department responds, we then go and take their response and send it back to the originator of the Microsoft form request. Whoa, that's workflow. That's stuff that you can do, right? So that's amazing pieces of a puzzle. And it doesn't have to be just SharePoint or even just Office 365. It can be through anything that has a connector, which is most of the things inside the world. So Adobe Sign, DocuSign, things like that, automating some of those processes, all of that is absolutely possible. I'm going to show you Power BI in just a second for reporting. And then there's all these other things that are here as well, right? So lots of items that are inside of here. If you're a social company, then you might grasp Yammer and like Yammer. It's a tool that's available. Let me just key in on a few things if you guys don't mind, okay? So here is Planner. For those who haven't seen Planner, again, it's a place to go in and create tasks and do some task tracking, project management, those types of things, right? It's very easy to use. So you could come in here and say, oh, you know what, I need to add a new task, click on a button, add in whatever the task is, meet with Tara, and just hit enter, and that task is entered in there, right? It's all good. So then I could click on that task and I could add all the information inside of there that I want to. Let me assign that. So I'll assign it to, Jared, and then I'll go ahead and put a label in it, right? So what labeling is one of the things that makes it flexible and for your organization. I can use it one way in my organization. You guys could use it a completely different way in your organization because I can customize what all these labels are for each project that I'm working on, right? So I could say, In my project, I need to be able to mark things as, urgent or approved to continue or on hold or whatever else you can come up with and think of, right? Microsoft doesn't think of it for you. You guys get to choose. And a cool thing is I've seen people use this for many things, project tracking, but also things like StageGate. So anyone out there in the audience who knows what a StageGate is, then you could use this for StageGate. So StageGate basically is I have a set of things that need to happen, and then it gets to a gate where then I need approval to move to the next stage. So that's StageGate, right? And so you could do things like set up a bunch of labels for what stage it goes to, which gate you're at, those types of things. So I'm going to mark this as approved to continue. And then here we have what's called buckets. So I can create buckets for all the different things that I want to have. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But you just easily go in and say, oh, that's going to be next week that I need to meet with Tara. Just need to set it up and get it all done. Put a priority on it. Yep, it's important. Type in some notes for it. Meet at lunch. And then I could also go in and add a bunch of checklist items to it as well. So I don't know what the steps might be, but say step 1 and then step 2. You'd put in real things in here like, have a kickoff meeting and do all those other things. And you can see over here, it's actually adding those to that little card that's sitting out here. So I can see those on the card, or I can remove them from the card if I wanted to. So it's kind of cool. But note, there's a place here to add attachments. And that's kind of where we get in a little bit of trouble, right? Should I be storing attachments here? That's a good question. So maybe, I have this guideline that she's supposed to go through when we meet, right? Or some agenda items. Is this the place to store that? Or is it that I should store those in a department site? Or is it Microsoft Teams? Where should it really be? And what's the usage of it going to be, right? So you got to think about some of that. Otherwise, you'll let this loose, people start using it, and you have a bunch of documents will end up in here that maybe shouldn't actually live here. Maybe should live other places, right? So be careful about that. Have some planning around that as well. So let me just go ahead and close that. And then I could say, hey, you know what? That's not technology. It's not HR. It's actually part of the marketing piece. I'll just grab it over here and move it over into marketing. So these are my buckets that I have. Really cool stuff. Then I can look here and say, hey, I've got charts for all of this. So it actually tells me, how much of the work is done, or I can look at it in a whole bunch of different views. So you can play with that and see. I can also see schedule. So I've got lunch with Tara already scheduled out here. Some of those times I have another meeting with Tara on here. You can even take those and move them to a different time. It's just very flexible calendar. So very neat stuff. But this is all tied to something called an Office 365 group. I want you to be aware of that, right? And learn a little bit more about that. Because when I created this plan, when I added all these members to this plan very easily by just clicking a button to add them, right? It not only created the planner for me, but it also created a place for conversations, which is actually an Outlook, a Outlook or an email address for my entire team. It created a place to store files, which is actually in a SharePoint site behind the scenes. It attached a OneNote notebook to it, right? Which again, I could store stuff in the OneNote notebook, right? A little bit confusing. And it also created a site, a SharePoint site behind the scene as well. So that's key to understand, because now I've got a bunch of things that are here that I may not have even needed. But what if now I started using that site that was in the background, right? And all of a sudden I invited somebody else to that site. They also see my plan. So we need to be careful about it and get some understanding around what Office 365 groups are and how they interact. I'm not telling you it's not safe. I'm certainly not saying that. I'm just saying understand it as you go forward so you can give good guidance to everyone else as they're using it, right? And let's figure out how do we lock it down so that only certain people can create certain things. So let's see if we can do some of that as well. So Planner, an excellent tool, okay? So here I have Power BI. So those who haven't seen Power BI, don't know what Power BI is, again, it's a reporting tool, right? Which allows me to do things like create executive dashboards. So I have a couple of dashboards here. These are widgets, visualizations or charts from other reports that I have out there. So it's just a bunch of reports. I just sum them all up on my dashboard, and I can do really nice things with it once I've got it into my dashboard, my personal dashboard. But those reports are basically like profitability reports or whatever you want to create. So I can create reports from an Excel document. So my data could be in an Excel document. It could be in a SQL Server database somewhere, or an Oracle database, or it could be in some cloud database. It could be a list that I have in SharePoint. It could be anything that can hold data I can connect to and create reports. So that makes it super powerful, right? And these reports are absolutely interactive. So I can click here and you'll see the report actually move. I can drill into different things. So I could come down here and say, oh, I want to see those numbers don't look right to me. I want to see the data for that. You right click on it, show that as a table, please. And then here's the data that made it. And you can drill further into some of that as well. So these are very interactive. You can do filtering, you do all kinds of stuff. Everyone can create these. They can create them for themselves. But like I said, when you get to the point where you need to have one person create it and multiple people be able to interact with it, you may need additional licensing for that. So keep that in mind. But still, extremely powerful. This is beautiful stuff, right? Amazing. And again, the learning curve on this, if you're already in Excel, you know Excel really, really well, you've done some charts in Excel, this is also going to make sense to you when someone shows you all the steps. They'll just give you the steps for how to do it, or a nice little ramp up. So then there's this other tool, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, okay, which is Microsoft Teams. Okay, and Microsoft Teams, a fantastic tool, also presents some issues because, again, it allows me to store files. So where can I store files? I feel like all of you are probably familiar, if you're using Teams at all, you're familiar with the chat functionality. And a lot of times what you'll do is just open up a chat and talk to someone, or you'll add more than one person to a chat and talk to them, you know, and you can just type in your messages. It's all really cool stuff. Hi there, you know, I spelled it wrong, but still it's okay. And it puts a message out and she can respond to me whenever she gets that, right? So amazing, right? We use it for chat. But what we'd like to push you towards is focusing those chats into memorable conversations, right? So how often have you chatted with somebody and we agreed on some things in the chat, but that was like a week ago. Going back and finding a week-old chat, whoa, that's pretty hard, right? Even if you use the search feature at the top, you say those words a lot. It's a lot, right? So what you can do is you can say, hey, I'm going to create a team. So here I have a team for my SpinMed projects. For every project we do through what we call SpinMed, this is all fictional. We have a channel inside of it. So using Teams with channels allows us to focus those conversations. So I can go here to, you know, the East Kaufman, and I can see what conversations we've had. Lowell House, see what conversations we have. And then Breezemont West, see what conversations we've had. And I can keep those targeted there in those areas. But in addition to being able to have those conversations inside her, either start a new conversation or just continue to reply to an existing conversation. Nice, right? So being able to do that. In addition to being able to do that, I can also store files here, right? And so I could, but again, maybe want some governance around that. Like what files should I be storing inside of a Microsoft Teams environment versus inside of a department site for SharePoint, right? Where is that line that we draw and what's the governance that we give to our individual users as they're going through building these things, right? So it's important. I'm going to talk more about that, okay? So in addition to that though, remember some of the things I just saw in those other tools? Like here's that location onboarding that I was looking at over inside of my planner. It's the same plan. There's the one that I just added a minute ago with those 2 steps on it. Perfect, right? And so my team can work on it from here. I can focus everything that team is doing to just this. And that's awesome. They go to Teams, opened up, and all the things they need to do are right there inside of Teams. That's amazing. I also had that Power BI report because it's important to this team. There's my customer profitability, right? And they can see it. They can still interact with these reports sitting over here. Absolutely wonderful. All the same functionality. And you can add a bunch of other things inside of here as well. So I added the actual SpinMed search for that SharePoint site, the BRD that we have that contains all the project information and some other stuff. So you can add all those things. In fact, you can add thousands of things inside of here. Too much for me to ever tell you. But you'll notice some names that you might notice, right? Box, Google Docs, Google's whole suites inside of here. SurveyMonkey's actually in here, you know, Adobe Signs inside of here. So you can add a lot of connectors to a lot of different sets of data. That makes Teams super powerful. And when you look at it in the context of a team and then separating those conversations in there, it makes it even more powerful. So we want you to kind of grasp that and just know that that can happen, right? Know that that can happen and start looking more into that. So those are the apps that I kind of wanted to look at with Office 365. I do want to talk more about SharePoint, but let's just go through. And I added some slides inside of here, so you guys will have this in your slide deck, so you'll be okay. Sound good? All right, cool.
So it's on mute there. Thank you so much, Jared. That was great information about Office 365. Can you go in, tell us a little bit more now about SharePoint? But we did have a question from the audience about the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive. Can you help us out with that?
Yep, that's a great question. So we've been kind of leading up to that along the way. So that's a great question. So I added this slide in to kind of help with that. And I wanted to expand that question out, though, to actually include Teams and some of those other tools like we've been talking about. And we get this all the time. I'm confused. I've got so many places to store documents. I don't know where to put them. This is very, very common. So I feel like every company is probably out there asking this question. And that's where the importance of governance comes into play, because figuring out what the best practices are and what stumbling blocks are going to be for each of these roads, that's important. So if I had to define OneDrive, I would define it by saying it is the place that you're going to store your personal business documents there, right? So what do you mean by that, Jared? Well, if I have a document that I'm working on with my team, and I might be the one who created a document, but I'm working on it with my team of people, my group of people, and it's just our working notes, right? I put that into a SharePoint site where all the rest of those people could have access to it automatically, right? And they could go in and continue to edit when I'm not there as well, right? Or I don't have to share it out with them because it's already be available for that team. But if I had a document that was just my personal thoughts, like these are all my thoughts about where we need to go, no one really needs to see this, I'm just trying to get it organized in my head, that's certainly a document that belongs like in my OneDrive. I wouldn't want that in my department site where everybody else could see it, because it's just ramblings. It's not cohesive, it's not finalized, it doesn't make any sense, right? So what we commonly see people adopt is training around what should go in your OneDrive and what makes sense for your organization. And a lot of that would end up being, personal business documents, things that only I really should see, that I should never really have to share out with anybody. But Jared, I can share from OneDrive. That is true. You can share from OneDrive if your organization allows that. But it's possible, and many organizations stop that from happening. They stop you from sharing external. They allow you to share internal. So there's different scenarios that could be there, and that's all fine. But they also put some governance around it. Like what I don't want to happen is a key person had a key file and they were working on that and they shared it out with everybody else in the department. So people had access to it at that particular point. But then that user left. So then what are we going to do? We're going to turn off that user's account. What's going to happen to their OneDrive? Eventually it's going to go away, right? And now my admin's got to have to go in there and look through everything and kind of see what's available and kind of clean it out. So that becomes a problem. So maybe department information should be in SharePoint versus over in your OneDrive. So then where does that leave Teams for that conversation? Same thing. Who has access to that team? Who will have access to that team in the future? And should I be storing documents there or over in a SharePoint department level site if that's who it's for? But what if we have a bunch of cross-functional sites, Jared? We call those projects, right? So I'm working on a project. It's not just HR, it's HR and marketing together, right? How do we then work on that? Teams is a great place for having that collaboration between those two. I think it's just important to note for them that when they are creating and generating documents there, maybe we have the intent of not making that the final resting place for those documents. So when we finish and we get the finalized documents, they end up going to where they're supposed to live, because we don't want people to have to come to Teams to search for those. We want that in the richness of all the other things that we're doing over in SharePoint, right? So Jared, how do we get from not knowing anything about where I should put all this to having all this governance and guidance around it? You need a plan. That's some talking. We need to do some discussing, figure out how we're supposed to use our SharePoint, and then train our users in the way that we want them to use our SharePoint environment, OneDrive environment, and Teams environment. So that's a great question. Whoever asked that and sent that in, fantastic question. I'm happy we had a chance to talk about that a little bit. What is SharePoint though? So if I had to give you, I think giving you a definition of what SharePoint is and what it can do will help answer those other questions too, like what should OneDrive be used for and what should Teams be used for? So if we think about what SharePoint actually is, it is a place to store documents. It's a website, really is really all it is. So you can use it as a website. So many people use it like as an intranet site and things like that. I find it to be a cure. So if you're still on OneDrives, all those things that you have problems with on OneDrives, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to, I need this document. Someone else has that document currently and I can't edit it. That's a problem. We get rid of some of that in SharePoint because we can do co-authoring inside of SharePoint. That makes it a little bit better. So it's a cure for certain things like that. You can also use it as an application platform, which I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. So having SharePoint then become, have workflow behind it and be able to track a process or do a process for you, that's amazing. Now you're using SharePoint as an application. Being able to separate departments or keep departments or bring departments together, also important. Think about it. Everyone knows what HR is and kind of gets a general idea of what HR departments actually do, right? So if we think about what an HR's needs would be around documents, you could say this: they need a place to share documents with everyone in the company, right? Because they'd have to share like benefits information, here's some policies, here's the employee handbook. We want a place where everyone in the company could get to that. So HR might control it, but everyone should be able to get to it. HR can read and write to it. Everyone else can just read, right? But then also you have a place where HR would need that only they can get to, right? Because they have stuff they're going to store, like employee information, reviews, evaluations, all those types of things. And what we don't want is the rest of the company to even have the accidentally get to, right? So they may need a subsite or a site that's locked down just for HR. So to get to that point, that means we need some planning again, right? We need to plan where we're going to be putting documents at, which documents go where, what's the security going to be around those documents. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle there, right? It's not that it's hard to figure out. It's just a matter of planning it to make sure we get it to work. Okay. All right. So that's what SharePoint really is. It's a place that actually allows you to do all of those things, to hold on to company information. Imagine when you have these subject matter experts, what happens when a subject matter expert leaves the company? Does all the information leave with them, or can we retain that information in an environment like SharePoint? So as they're doing their daily job, let's have them deposit some of that information in SharePoint, and now we've got it in a place where we can keep it for the company. What about being able to find information? I know everyone here has had problems trying to search for documents, right? How do I find it? How do I find it? Well, I looked for a contract, but I've got 10,000 contracts out here. Oh, what I really wanted was the contract that was for this specific client that was during this specific period of time. How do I narrow things down like that? SharePoint can help you with that because it has a lot of searchability in there. A great search engine, but also we're going to allow you to put useful metadata and things like that around your SharePoint documents, and I'll show you what that means. So what I want my SharePoint to be is like one true source of information, or a one-stop shop, or I want to make sure that I know that it's secure. So let me jump in and kind of show you a little bit of that if we could. So I'm going to go here to just a basic SharePoint site. So hopefully all of you have seen the SharePoint site, but if you haven't, that's okay. So your organization size might be at the size where you don't necessarily need to use SharePoint as an intranet, like as far as, hey, here's what's going on today. Here's some news. Here's some information from the executives, because you're like under 10 or under 20 users and everybody meets every day and you all see each other. So maybe that's okay. You don't really need that piece of the puzzle. Although you could use SharePoint as a place to put a bunch of links to everything that you guys need to get to. So use it as a launch pad, right? So that'd be a scenario like this. Or you might be at the size company where, yeah, we do need to have a place where people can come to see information and news and get to important links and all those, and be able to search through our environment and such. So, on this particular page, these are all just test pages. I've got this beautiful, video that's stored over in Stream. So Microsoft Stream, I'm leveraging it. That shows, here's from the leadership. Every month or every quarter they update it, and boom, I can find it right there. I've got Yammer because our company is a very social company, and we like using Yammer, and people like to communicate back and forth and through about different topics that are going on. So we have a Yammer feed over here where we do praises to people and things like that. Hey, Sally did a great job. Tara she sold 10,000 units this year. I don't know, whatever it is. But then we all have all these launch pads again. So, how do I get to the new hire center? Having a new hire center on your website might be awesome, right? So that person can go there and find everything they need as a new person, videos, training, how to do stuff, whatever they need. Projects, we maybe have projects on our site as well, on one, part of our SharePoint. So I can get straight over to the projects list and see all that stuff. Maybe a very popular thing, day by day, we figured out, oh, everyone's always trying to go here to get the expense report. So boom, I just put it as a link right there on the homepage. Those are things that you can do. You can leverage SharePoint for that. But then you also might want to have news, and I can take news from all my departments and roll it all up to one place if I want to, so that everybody's contributing to news and we all kind of get to see it in the same place. Events, things like that. So you can be very imaginative, but really I could have, here's a bunch of links to get to all the different things that I need to get to for an employee, so that those links show up on every single page that I'm on in SharePoint. Easy for people to find, intuitive, very nice. doing the same thing here. It's just another slight different approach. We have some of our clients are very into making sure that their employees are recognized and their employees are pieces of the puzzle. They're all engaged, right? And so to do that, they do things like put anniversaries right on the homepage, birthdays right on the homepage, news that's important, not just to the company, but news that's about the people as well. They do a lot of things like that. And I think that's kind of key and cool as well. So I can do all types of things inside of my SharePoint environment as far as using it as an intranet. But what about those documents, right? And so I've got a bunch of stuff over in my shared drive. How do I get it over into my SharePoint? Let's just say that you picked it all up and moved it over to SharePoint and then dropped it, right? You would still get a benefit out of SharePoint because now you've got things like versioning, which you didn't have on your shared drives, right? It's automatically turned on. So what that solves is a person overwrites a document, no big deal. We can roll back to the previous version of that document. I can secure it a little bit better as well. My security level is going to be better over here inside of SharePoint. I can assign someone the ability to be able to edit a document, and I can assign other people only to be able to read the document. So I can highly control the way that security works inside of here, and then also have it very auditable as well. And that's what we want. Let's just say that some of you you cater to like either clients or vendors or something like that. You're wondering, well, Jared, our data's been all over the place in the past, but I want to move it to SharePoint. I want it to be a little bit cleaner and have better document hygiene. How can I do that? Well, some of you like folders, and some of you hate folders because you didn't create the folder structure. Somebody else did, and you're like, oh my gosh, who created this folder structure? It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to show you a way that you could come in and say, well, I want to have it so that it's more flexible than folders, or I want to use, something that's more powerful than folders even. So here's an example of using something we call document sets. So write that one down because a lot of people have SharePoint, don't know that document sets exist and aren't taking advantage of what they do. So a document set looks like a folder, and I know we're about 15 minutes out. So document sets look like folders. They act like folders, but they're like folders on steroids, and they can have folders inside them as well. So here's a scenario where I have clients that I need to take care of, right? With a client, I have financial information. Well, that's the finance department's piece of the puzzle. I've got maybe my IT team maybe does something for the client. So I've got the IT team portion of it, right? I've got maybe a contract that goes along with it that everyone needs to see, not just the finance department. I've got different pieces of the puzzle, and we've been storing those all over the place. So to get the real picture of a client, I had to go to 5 different locations to see the full picture of a client. Here, what I'm doing is using document sets for this. What I can do with a document set that I can't do with a folder is put metadata with it, so additional column information. So not only do I have a title for this, but over here I have who the client is, and I have the status of it. And you could think of more things that you might want to add because I made those up, right? And then inside of these, you could go in. Let me find one that has actual folders inside of it. Let's find a better one. It's probably the first one that's there. Nope. It's probably the little house. There we go. So I have it so I could have folders set up inside of it as well. So inside of one client folder, I could have, here's all their contracts, here's documentation, here's imaging, here's some invoices, here's procedures that we have for those clients. And every time I add a document to any of these, what happens is all that metadata also gets assigned to them, which is really, really cool. So my users don't have to continually enter that metadata over and over. What does that do for me, Jared? It makes it more searchable. So when I'm out in the search environment, I could say, oh, search for everything about this client. And all these documents are tagged with that client's name. So they're all going to show up in the search. That's amazing. Amazing stuff. That's just one scenario.
Jared, we are at the 15-minute mark.
Yep, I got you. So here's another scenario where I've got documents inside of here, but I'm not using folders. But since I'm using metadata, it allows me to be able to go in and say, oh, I want to, do things like I do in Excel, sort it by this, filter it by this, group it by the contract type, and then look at it separately, look at it differently. So I'm not tied into a folder structure. I can do more with that. Keep that in mind. Know that it's possible. That's all we're asking. Okay. So then let me talk about searchability real quick, and I'll jump back over into some slides. So check this out. I've got a bunch of information out here in my SharePoint, and I don't want you to think about one day's worth of information or just this year's. I want you to think about when you're at 5 years of SharePoint, 10 years of SharePoint, all the data and documents you're going to have inside of here. Well, I just built a search page that I could go in and say, oh, let me search for a person, Patty. So I found Patty. Here's all of her information about Patty. And then over here, here's things that Patty and I have in common that we can actually look at. So things I have permissions to see. And then over here, I'm able to break it down by what I'm looking for. So I had some contracts earlier. I'm looking for contracts that Patty and I worked on. Boom, I click that and it narrows it down to just those. You can enhance SharePoint search to be that level of a search. Those are cool things that you'll be able to do. And then last but not least, what I'm going to show inside of here is just a little bit of what we did for a specific client. They used to have an Excel document that they worked out of that basically looks something like this. Okay, it had, you know, the name, the project name they were working on, the contact for it, some additional information like phone number and stuff like that, what phase they were at, notes about what they were working on, the last time they communicated with them, and then when the next time they were supposed to communicate with them. They were keeping all that in an Excel process, right? You may have Excel processes that you're doing too. Things like, you know, I'm working on credential tracking, or so all of our people have to be certified at a specific time, you know, or I'm working on, you know, projects and I have tasks that I'm tracking. All those things can be put into SharePoint as a list instead of an Excel document, and then can be automated as well. So we have some automation that goes on inside of here, like when a new activity is added, when the reminder date comes up, we actually send out an email saying, hey, this is past due for being able to contact that person. We keep track of that stuff. Imagine if you had contracts, right? And you needed to have a reminder of when that contract was up for renewal. Boom, you can automate those things inside of SharePoint. So that's pretty cool stuff that you can do. And even out of all that, out of automating all that stuff, I even have a nice homepage for it as well, to where anyone on my team can come in and see from a managerial view to say, oh, look, here's all these things we need to get contacted because they're overdue. Here's all the ones that are due for today and so forth. So that's pretty neat stuff that you could do inside of your SharePoint environment as you go through and start customizing it and doing some of those things. So really nice things. Let's go back over and take a look at where we are here inside of SharePoint. So I'm just going to stick down some slides and share the screen. All right.
Thanks, Jared, for sharing all that stuff about SharePoint. There was a lot of cool stuff and a lot to learn there. Could you narrow it down and tell us, if we have SharePoint in Office 365, how can that benefit me today or you guys today?
So what am I going to get out of it today? It's a great question, right? So how can I leverage SharePoint today to make it better for me, right? So you're going to get better document management if you are not in SharePoint and you move over to SharePoint from, like, say, shared drives and such. You're going to get better document management. So you're going to have a better chance to have more organized files, secure files, be able to apply permissions the right way. Versioning of documents is going to be there automatically. More searchability. Everybody wants that out of the box. Things that people don't think about, document retention. So if you have things that say, oh, this document needs to be here 5 years from now as well, like, I can't remove this document. I can't delete it for 5 years. And then once it's 5 years old, then I can move it to a recycle bin or move it to an archive or terminate that document or get rid of that document. That's document retention. You can't get that with shared drives, right? So you can get that with SharePoint and Office 365. It's something that's built into the product, right? You just have to make sure you configure it, set it up the correct way. And then automation. So contract management, customer and client relations stuff, feedback, you know, document review processes, onboarding processes. Imagine all the steps that are in onboarding, putting that into an automated process inside of your SharePoint. All that would be awesome. And then with Office 365, what you're going to get out of the box, of course, is really the Microsoft Office suite. So you're going to get that. That's a plus. And then you get Microsoft Teams, so you can collaborate and do all those different things. You get all those other cool tools that I showed you, Planner, Microsoft Forms, Power BI, and all those other things right out of the box. You have them there and they're already working for you and you can take advantage of them. So that's really cool. So the thing here that's very important is I want to make sure that you handle this properly. You may have noticed that all the way through this, I've said, in order to make sure that it doesn't go wrong, you need to make sure you have a plan, right? And that's the answer to several of the questions that came over as well. How do I get from not having anything to having a great SharePoint experience? One of the questions was, we have field offices all over the country. What's the best way to organize that data? Well, if I had two companies that were exactly the same and both of them we have field offices all over the country, how should I structure all these sites and where should I be putting data? If I interviewed both of those companies, I may find that both of them have a different approach to it. It could be things like their culture is a little bit different. It could be things like, the need and how often those documents are accessed could be different. It could be that we're trying to avoid duplicating documents and that we see common needs between those field offices and things like that. So really what it is having those discussions up front and really making sure that we key in on best practices. So still being able to protect the company, have the best practices in place, and then cater to those users. Being able to do all that properly is going to be where the benefit comes in, right? And all that's just sitting down, getting the best practices in place and having those conversations. We don't want SharePoint to become this beast. We don't want it to become something that people don't like to use, right? And that can happen. Jared, has anyone ever come to you and said their SharePoint was horrible? Yes, absolutely. The first questions we ask them is, did you have governance? No. Are you using content types? One of the best practices. No, don't even know what those are. Are you using managed metadata? No, don't even know what that is. You're not doing any of the best practices and you didn't have any plan in place. That's why your SharePoint existence wasn't really good. And so have a plan, talk about it amongst, through yourself to figure out how it should be set up, or engage someone to do that for you. Figure out what the best practices are, not just that Microsoft says, but what's best practices for your organization. You are different than Microsoft, right? Microsoft says, give them teams and let it organically grow. Everyone else says, that's insane, don't do that, right? So Microsoft's not always right about it. They're telling you what works for them at their organization. We've worked with Microsoft before on some projects, and the way they actually do their work is different than any other company I've seen. They change in a heartbeat. You don't do that. You're stable. So keep that in mind. Training, you need to put that in place. If you're going to migrate documents from SharePoint from OneDrive over into SharePoint, let's use a migration program to do that, and let's have a very planned migration. Okay, there's several steps that'll be inside of there, like figuring out what we want the new SharePoint to look like, figuring out where the old data is, how to get it to where it needs to be, how to make sure it has proper context and best practices around it, and then also allowing people to still work in the old environment while you are setting up the new environment. That takes multiple days to do, not just one day, it's weeks, right? And then getting that all right in the end and synchronizing. That's several steps involved in migrating data. So keep that in mind. It has to be planned. And then customize your SharePoint if necessary. Try to stay out of the box if possible, but it's okay. It can be customized. And then find some value adds inside of there. So to keep people engaged in SharePoint, find some things that everybody uses that you can automate for them, and they let them see the benefit of that, and then you'll continue to seek out more benefit there. So all that's very important. All right, so real quick, I'm just going to go through some of the advantages. And I've been talking about these the whole time, so these will all sound familiar to you. Okay, so financially, how does SharePoint or Office 365 make sense to me? Because it's a more of a per month per user type cost versus having to have a capital expense of several $100,000 to buy equipment and all those other pieces of the puzzle that go into setting up environments internally, server costs, licensing, and things like that. You get to spread that out over a long period of time. So predictable costs. Plus, if you're a nonprofit, you should be looking for either no cost or low cost. That's what you should be looking for from Microsoft, and that is possible. I put 3 links in here that'll get you guys to where you need to be. If you think, wow, we're paying too much for this. Well, TechSoup, if you went through there and they helped you out, they probably just got it right the first time because they've done it for so long. But you can definitely go and read about what Microsoft says and it should cost, and you'll be able to see, So depending on the number of users you need, you could be in the no cost version or you could be in the low cost version. But still, when you're getting licensing, there's still additional things that might happen along the way. Like I said, Power BI and some of that stuff. So it makes sense from that point of view because, like I said, for very minimal cost, you can be in SharePoint in Office 365. From a security standpoint, it allows you to use your Active Directory. So that same single login that you're using for a specific user, Tara logs into her environment. It's the same thing she needs for Teams. It's the same thing she needs for SharePoint. It's the same thing she needs for Planner. It's all one. And so the tracking of a smaller number of logins for any person is actually really good for them, right? So you keep it all there and you're able to audit the entire environment, all of it at one time. That's also really nice. And then the ability to assign permissions to sites or libraries and set up a structure that can enforce security itself. That's also good. To be able to externally share or stop externally sharing if that's what you choose. That's also built in, so that also makes sense. So you can control that rather than having like a Dropbox, which your IT department may not be controlling, right? Depending on who set that up for you, right? And then the ability to, like I said, to apply labels to things and mark them as internal so that when they leave the company, they are encrypted and no one else can get into them. That's huge and powerful for the majority of you that are here on this session. And then no IT costs, low IT costs. We're not having to spend hours maintaining servers, updating with patches and keeping them secure and doing all that stuff. We don't have to do any of that anymore. And so Microsoft handles all that. All we need to do is look at the updates from Microsoft to see what's new coming out and what changes they're making and keep our people ahead of it. So those are things that we can do. All right, excellent.
So just to wrap it up today, our goals were to arrive at the understanding of what Office 365 is, what SharePoint is, what it can do for your organization, and what makes sense for your organization. And as Jared just covered, the security, IT, and financial point of view.
Yeah. So I know we're here at the end, and we have only a minute or two left, but we're happy to stay and answer as many questions as necessary. And those can be on the recording if necessary. So whatever time we have, we'll turn it back over to Ellie and let you decide that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we had two come in that maybe we can get to real quick. Somebody was asking about Confluence and if you could compare the challenges and the benefits between that and this.
So the only way I can answer that, because and so let's all remember, I'm not a Confluence expert, so I don't go out and sing the praises of the right way Confluence should be set up. But I can tell you what I've run up against as we've transferred people from a system like Confluence over into SharePoint, or we've had clients who want to keep Confluence and then also keep SharePoint as well as they go along. Here's some things that I've heard. One, the system wasn't as thorough as far as handling documents as SharePoint is. In SharePoint, the individuals felt that SharePoint had a better way of managing documents and then being able to expand what you're doing with documents along the way, like adding workflow on top of it and doing those types of things. So a better document management system inside of it. And so we've had a lot of people move from that environment over into SharePoint, and that's really probably the only way that I can answer that as a comparison.
And then our other question was whether clients combine their CRM systems like Salesforce with their Office products.
That is a fantastic question. So Salesforce and Dynamics 365, okay? Because both of those could be used for that same thing that Salesforce is doing. I consider those both competitors. So with Dynamics 365, if you're using like the sales portion of that, it can automatically tie into SharePoint. In fact, in the background, it's just built off of the same technologies under the hood as SharePoint. So it's all part of the same cloud environment and such. So there's ways for us to automatically integrate into SharePoint. However, we're working on, so we've done a lot of Salesforce work and having Salesforce, because again, Salesforce is another tool that does something really special, but doesn't really manage documents the way that we'd really like to. And I don't want to have like 100 extra licenses for people who don't really need to use Salesforce, who just want to see the documents that were being stored in Salesforce, right? That's a real issue. So what they'd like to be able to do is have Salesforce do what it's good at, and then have those documents be stored over in SharePoint, and then be able to allow the Salesforce users to see those documents from Salesforce, but then have the non-Salesforce users be able to see those documents and interact with them from SharePoint and not have to have licenses to get into Salesforce, right? And so that's all possible. We do that today. We, in fact, just finished up we just went live for one of our clients last week, where we built this very, very intricate system of Salesforce and SharePoint using Power Automate, Microsoft Flow, being able to set up workflows for it. So that all the non-Salesforce users could have access to all the documents, and they're storing millions of documents here. So not just ones that are like contracts and stuff from Salesforce, but everything about that client. So storing all of that, everything about that project, all stored inside of SharePoint. But then we had to do some writing back to Salesforce as well. Like, here's the once we generate it, let's put the link to that library back in Salesforce, so a Salesforce user can click on it and get straight to those documents. Plus, they had a community section. Those who know what communities are in Salesforce, they had a community section, which is like a place for the end user to see, that we had to write API calls to interact with SharePoint to go get documents that those people should be able to see, even though they don't have access to SharePoint. Huge, but it's all possible to do. So some of that's very easy, like there's connectors inside of Flow to be able to communicate with Salesforce back and forth. So you can You can see when an account's created, when everything about opportunities, everything about all the different objects that are inside of Salesforce. And then you can interact with Salesforce back and forth. So it's really, really all tied together. So you can do that.
And then one more question just popped in, and it asked, all of this is backed up in the cloud, correct? And
Yes.
It requires a stable internet connection?
So that's really two real questions, okay? That are very, very, when I'm saying real, I mean, these are very good questions because you need to consider these things, right? All right, so is it backed up in the cloud, right? So let's not say that. Let's just say SharePoint resides in the cloud, right? And your data is redundant. It lives on multiple servers. So there's no one single point of failure for where your data lives. So if a server went back, you don't even know where your servers are. But if a server went down, you wouldn't even notice because it automatically just starts getting the data from the other redundant server while they rebuild that one that's behind the scenes. You don't even see what's going on in the background. So that's what we mean by it's redundant in the cloud. Is it backed up? That's a different question. And no, it's not. So can I restore? Let's just say someone deletes one document, right? That document gets deleted, but it goes to the recycle bin. So you can recover it from the recycle bin, no problem. So let's say you delete it, it gets deleted, and no one recognizes it, and it's been gone for like a year because we only look at that document once a year, right? And I come back and I'm like, oh no, it's not here. Oh no, it's not in the recycle bin. Likely it moved to the secondary recycle bin where it will stay until we can go and recover. So it's still, you're probably okay, you're covered. That was an extreme example, but you're still covered. But what if somebody maliciously deleted an entire library because you were using like the OneDrive sync client or something like that, and they deleted all the documents and didn't tell anybody, or you were using an old unrecommended practice from Microsoft and you were connected through your Window Explorer instead, and you deleted everything out of there. We had a client accidentally do that, and it was thousands of documents because they thought, well, I don't need it on my machine anymore, so I'll just delete it. And it deleted it from SharePoint. So we caught it before the 14-day period, right? So there's a 14-day period where when something drastic happens, you can still catch it and undo that drastic happening, right? So we caught it. We called Microsoft and said, Microsoft, you need to restore this. It took them a while to restore it because the amount of documents in there was huge, but they were able to restore it all back to its capability. But Jared, you said 14 days. What if it had gone past that date? How do I get that? No one is backing up your information inside the cloud where it's redundant, not backed up, right? So how do I then get those documents back? So if you have mission critical documents where you're like, okay, I have this and I absolutely need it to be backed up as well. So we're scared that it's going to go away. And if it went away, our whole business will fold. Then you absolutely need to invest in either one of the third-party backup management systems that are out there. There's a lot of people who offer that, where they'll back it up to another cloud location somewhere. Or you can create a scenario where you are pulling that down to a file server if you wanted to as well. I don't recommend using that as like go work from that, but if you're just looking at, I need to have it backed up to make sure we're safe, then that's okay. You can still put in provisions to make sure you're backed up. I suggest probably one of the companies that does it for a living. Real good question.
One more question to follow up on that. When we're working on documents, we're working in the cloud, correct?
That is correct. So let's just say that you are, I'm going to actually speak to that by showing it. Oops, sorry. Let's just say that you are using a document library that's out here, and you work on this document library every single day, right? So you're like, oh my gosh, coming to the browser to work on it, it's okay, but I really like to work on it just on my desktop, right? So let me clarify that question a little bit and give some insight around it. If I'm here in the library and I'm online, if I click on this document, this could be someone's interpretation of I'm working on it in the cloud. I'm working on it in the browser, right? That's someone's interpretation of that. Another person's interpretation might be, okay, I have this document, I want to open it up, but I want to open it up in the application. So I want to open it up in Microsoft Word to where now I'm working on it on my desktop. So that could be someone else's interpretation of it. That document still is in the cloud. I'm pulling it over here now. So this is the same exact document. Okay, and you can see that I'm actually working on it here as well as working on it here. So this little thing says Jared Edge is working on it in the cloud. And if Jared Edge goes over here and adds some more stuff to it, this is co-authoring. Okay, I add some more stuff to it. It automatically saves when I'm working in the cloud. So that's the way the cloud actually works. And then I'll go back over here to my document here. You'll see that information showed up here in Word also. So, I mean, it still gives you all the functionality. I'm working on my desktop. Yes, the document itself is in the cloud. So that's another aspect. Not finished yet, though. So what if I don't like going? I'm just a person. And you know, you have different cultural levels of people inside of your organization. We have people who are not going to accept, I have to go to the browser to work on it. They're not going to accept that. They want to be able to work on it on their desktop because they work on it every single day and it's cumbersome, right? Especially people who have like files that are complicated types of files, like Adobe, some of the Adobe files. So what can I do then? All right, great question. I'm just going to go here and pull this over to the screen. So this is Windows Explorer. Okay, Windows Explorer, everybody's familiar with Windows Explorer. I have connected my Spin23 site. I have a document library out there on my TMI site the library is called Documents, and I have it here on my desktop. So this is me looking at it like a folder, right? This is me opening up a document here or saving a document or even, creating a document if you wanted to here. So this is me working on it like it's not SharePoint, working on it like it's a shared drive. Two ways to do that. One, not recommended anymore by Microsoft, and one is recommended by Microsoft. This way that I did it is I'm using the OneDrive sync client. So I'm using what's called sync. So in any library that I'm in, there's a sync button here that I could click and it'll add it to my items that I already have synced for this specific site. If you saw it really quickly, it opened up a thing and it said OneDrive, and even right here it says, we are connecting OneDrive on your device. Okay. That's a misconception. It's just poorly named. It is not actually OneDrive. It is the OneDrive sync client that it's using. So then it has the same name on it, but it's not your actual OneDrive itself. Okay. It's just two different technologies with the same name, and that's unfortunate, right? So once you get all that done and you have that done, it's going to then show up inside of here. Let's just see if it did. Yep. So now I have that policy demo site right there. Those are all those same documents that are there. Currently, the status of those, they are in the cloud right now. I don't have them on my desktop, but if I go to interact with one of them and I try to open it up, then it'll open it up and do all that stuff for me, but it's going to need to download it to my machine first. So it'll synchronize it to my machine. So there's some things to be worried about here as well, right? If I delete something from here, it deletes it from SharePoint as well. It's not just on your desktop, it is in SharePoint, okay? You're just working on it here. In addition to that, if I am counting on getting metadata, so for all those documents that you're looking at, I'm counting on getting the contract type and the effective date and the expiration date. I'm not going to get those through the OneDrive sync client when I'm working on the document here, unless I do it in Word. That means you need to do some training is my whole point about this. So here I have that document. I've opened it. They have to go here and go into the information panel, more properties, and they could work on the properties from here. So there's the categories, there's a contract type that I had there, so all that stuff is accessible. You just need to train them how to do it and how to work in an alternate way. All right. So I tried to cover all the bases of that question. It was a huge question. It was just all in a little small form.
And here I thought it was like yes or no. So
yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Well, I don't have any more questions, and I know we're way over time. So I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And just a quick reminder that if you do not already have a profile on GiveDSM, or if you haven't visited GiveDSM to check it out, please consider doing so. It's just a great platform for a variety of different nonprofits to post needs that they have, and for everybody else to see if those needs align with their ideas about what they want to give to. So givedsm.org, please check that out, especially at the end of the year when we're all definitely focused on giving and supporting our nonprofit partners. So we will be sharing notes and the recording, and probably Tara and Jared would be happy to answer any questions after this. If you want to email them or email me, and we can get you guys connected. So thank you so much, Jared, and thank you so much, Tara, for joining us today, and for everybody else. And we look forward to future trainings. One that I will just mention real quick is a 4-part series that we're going to be offering starting in January 12th. It is around data for good. So as a nonprofit, we collect a variety of different data points. What do we do with those? How do we tell our story? How do we utilize that information? So we'll have a 3-part virtual series, the Wednesday, the 12th, 19th, and 26th of January. And then the 4th series will be in person, and they'll really just walk through with you, how to use your specific data. And so it'll be very individualized. So the registration for that is up on our website. Please check it out, as well as all future trainings are always on our website too. So I'll stop there. We're way over time, so I'll stop talking, and we just appreciate everybody and thank you.